what do you think companies are most surprised by? Right. And is there obviously there's a difference. I predominantly work with small startups. And so a lot of them are pre-commercial. And, the intent is to build the QMS infrastructure and the regulatory infrastructure to satisfy some of these shifts in regulatory requirements so that when you're in the commercial state, you're not having to go back and do a bunch of rework. But I'm just curious, what do you think companies are most surprised by right now?
I think there's probably a level of surprise about just how much FDA is expecting in the current environment. A lot of companies, especially if you're just paying attention to the public-facing kinds of statements, maybe think about FDA in the current administration as kind of, a more business-friendly, kinder, gentler, kind of an FDA. And I would say for a number of reasons, that's probably not the case. I think the amount of change that's happened is leading people at FDA to probably make more conservative decisions in the current environment. I've seen that over the last year across a number of businesses where FDA could make less conservative decisions reasonably, from my perspective, but they are choosing to say no to things they could say yes to because it's the safe choice. So I think we see a lot of that, which surprises some companies, just thinking about sort of public-facing statements from the administration, because the people making those decisions are career service people at FDA who are not necessarily aligned with those public-facing statements. And then I think the other thing is just being surprised at how much evidence FDA is expecting in submissions. They're expecting, they'll put out a guidance that talks about all the things that they're willing to accept in terms of real-world evidence. But the reality is a far cry from that. I mean, in effect, what FDA considers real-world evidence to be is a randomized controlled trial. So I don't, it's like, I'm exaggerating just a little bit, but, it's like you think that you can take the data you have and this reasonable information that you've collected and bring it to FDA and try to convince them of, a reasonable, sort of scientific approach to a particular technology based on, well-established clinical evidence. But if it wasn't a prospective randomized controlled trial in some fashion of either prospective data or retrospectively collected data, largely FDA is going to be dismissive of that. And that's been the case for a number of years. But I would say that's probably surprising a number of small startups. And then the other thing is for a lot of the software companies, or software AI focused, AI and machine learning, innovations that we're seeing in software as a medical device, FDA has this expectation that you are going to basically do your algorithmic training and validation, and then you're going to do a separate clinical validation in a brand new data set. And I think that surprises a lot of companies in the software as a medical device space, because that's not how they think about developing algorithms and validating them. They've already done the algorithm training and validation. And then FDA is like, well, that's great. Now go and do another validation in a totally independent data set following, sort of our tried and true approach to how we want to see clinical validation done. They basically ignore the training and validation norms across, let's say, the industry for a lot of other AI sort of use cases. FDA has not caught up there. I think they will eventually. I think we'll see something maybe come closer in line where your validation for software is going to be more like what we see for other AI use cases. But right now, FDA's view is it's great that you did training and validation on your software. Now go run a clinical study and clinically validate it, and then we'll accept what you've done.